Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Title Tuesday event played today, September 23rd of the great year 2025. Now, very recently, Title Tuesday changed the format. Originally, it was a casual tournament, 2 events played on Tuesday with a time control of 3+1. But about a month ago, chess.com decided to change the format so the event was played with a time control of 5 minutes and 0-second increment. But on top of that, it became a qualifier to the Esports World Cup for the next edition, which will be held in the summer of 2026. So a lot more at stake, a lot more on the line. In the first couple editions, I actually struggled mightily. I don't think I had a single finish in the top 5, despite my illustrious career in Title Tuesday, having won over 100 events with the 3-minute time control. So after getting off to a rough start these first couple of weeks, I came back today. I was looking to put in my best, maybe move a little bit slower, better time usage, and all that jazz. So without further ado, let's start talking about the tournament. Now, in this event, I start off red hot with a score of 5 points out of 5, but then I would draw 2 games in a row. Now, the 2 games that I would draw would be against Seen a Move Ahead, a very strong player from Iran, as his name would denote, obviously, and against another Iranian player, Alireza Firouzja. Now, it's amazing to see all these great players coming out of these countries, which do not traditionally have a big chess history, like Turkey, like Iran. So because of that, you never know what's going to happen. So I drew 2 games in a row. My chat was very angry at me. And now we're going to jump into a game that I played, I believe, in the 8th or the 9th round of the event. I think it's actually the 9th round, so this recording is a touch off, but you guys have to bear with me. So after drawing a couple of games, I'm going into round number 9 on a score of 7 points out of 8, and I'm playing with the black piece against Daniel Naroditzky. Now remember, this is an 11-round tournament. I was half point behind Alireza headed into this round, so a lot is at stake. So I have the black pieces. Daniel Naroditzky plays e4. I play c5. We get the move knight to c3. And now I play the move a6. Now here, Daniel plays the move g3 in this position. And now I go g6. Now this is a little bit surprising because, of course, Daniel Naroditzky, very strong grandmaster. He's done a lot of educational videos. I was kind of expecting him to play knight f3 and a classic open Sicilian. I'm not going to reveal which line I was going to play. Maybe I would have gone for El Najdorf. Maybe I would have played the classic Wrath of Khan variation with e6 and a6 perhaps. I might have also played the classic accelerated Dragone with g6 and bishop g7, but there are a lot of options. But Daniel goes knight c3 and plays the closed Sicilian. This is a system that I've actually recommended at times for beginners because it's very easy development here. You're able to develop your knight very quickly and you get your king out of the center. Now, the first thing you guys are going to notice is I put my knight on this very strange h6 square towards the edge of the board. Now, the reason I did this is I was trying to get Daniel out of his preparation very, very early, and I thought perhaps he wouldn't be familiar with this move. Now, I might add that this knight h6 line is something that I studied against the Grand Prix all the way back in the great year of 1999. Now, most people who are watching this video obviously were not alive then, but it's very easy to forget how long I've been playing chess and how long I've been studying this ancient game with carved wooden pieces. But I go knight h6 to try and surprise Daniel a little bit here. And now he decides to play the move castles. So I castle my king here, and we get the move f5 being played. And at this moment in the game, I was already feeling very, very uncomfortable with what was going on here, because at this point, I'm thinking to myself, Daniel is very well prepared. So I decide to play the move pawn takes pawn, and Daniel again blitzes out this move knight to h4. At this point, I'm thinking to myself, what on earth is going on? How on earth is someone like Daniel Naroditzky, who's supposed to be a streamer and not a professional chess player anymore, completely prepared for this obscure line in an opening that he doesn't normally play all that often? Nonetheless, Daniel is ready. He goes knight h4. I take the juicer. At this point, I have to take the pawn on e4 here, because if I don't take this pawn, I'm simply going to get crushed on the king side, and therefore I just got to go for it. So I play pawn takes pawn. Daniel takes the knight, I take back, we get the move queen to h5, and now I play the move king g7. Now, one of the great things about this position is that my moves are pretty much only moves. When Daniel trades, I got to take the juicer. If I don't take the juicer, I resign because I'm down a minor piece. After queen h5, I gotta go king g7. If I play bishop g7, after bishop takes e4, let's say h6, and knight to f5 here, takes. White is crushing with a double-A battery, threatening the checkmate. I gotta move the rook, and I still get checkmated by the double-A battery regardless, because now the f-file is exposed, and my king can't move over. So, from that standpoint, even though I'm walking into some heavy prep, I'm kind of happy because I have to play only moves, which means I don't have to burn time, and with no increment, you don't want to get too low. So Daniel takes the pawn at e4, and what's amazing about this position is the computer actually likes to move pawn to g4, ignoring the fact that white is down 2 pawns here and just going all in with a big attack. Say I take another pawn after g5, my bishop gets trapped and I lose the game. Daniel instead plays knight e4. He does use a little bit of time here, but even though this isn't the best move, you'll notice that I'm really struggling on the clock here. I have 3 minutes and 25 seconds, which is a lot of time, but I'm being attacked here by Daniel. And as I've mentioned in many other videos, amongst players who are really strong in no increment formats, Daniel is probably one of the best. And the primary reason for that is he's incredibly good at attacking and getting his opponents very low on time. So I go knight to e5 here. This is another move that I think is very obvious. When Daniel was thinking for the 25 seconds, I already was intending to play this move, because if white plays a move like, let's say, rook to e1, actually not rook to e1, let's say there's some other move like actually I was going to say rook to e1 allows bishop g4, trapping the queen, although white does have knight f5 here, but nonetheless it creates a threat. On top of that here, when you look at my king position, my king is very exposed here. I have this lone bishop supporting the king. I have these pawns that can potentially be targeted. So when I go knight e5, not only do I have bishop g4, but I can try to cover up my king side with this move knight g6. So we get rook f5, I go knight g6 here. This is not the best move. Computer prefers the move f6, but I go knight g6 because conceptually it makes a lot of sense to provide even more cover for the monarch. As we know, you got to protect the monarch. So we get rook to f1. Now I go f6 here, trying to avoid hanging something on the f file with a double stack. Worth pointing out that I can't take the rook here, because after knight takes bishop, checks the king, queen takes bishop, rook g8, and knight to g5. Here come these knights along with the white queen to checkmate this black king in the corner pocket. So I play the move f6. Daniel plays bishop to h3, and this is a move that Daniel plays here after a long think. You'll notice that when you're playing with no increment, usually the purpose of building up a big time advantage is to use it at the right moment. But the problem for Daniel here is that I was very quiet on my stream. I realized the severity of the situation and the importance, and so I'm actually thinking on his time. And when he goes bishop to h3 here, I play the move knight takes h4 after a relatively short think. We get queen takes knight, I take, and now after rook f5, I play the move e6. Now at this point, I thought I was simply winning the game, because after rook to h5 here, I play the move f5 here, attacking the pony, offering the trade of the queens. If white takes the bishop, after takes, and e5 here, I simply have an extra tower for a bishop, and I should win in this endgame. But shockingly, I think for both Daniel and myself here, we both missed how big of a mistake this f5 concept was, because in this position, white can sack the rook with rook to g5 here, checking the king. If I move the king after queen takes bishop, I cannot take the horsey because of queen g7, checkmating the king. And if I move my queen after knight takes d6, oh, I thought knight d6 was good. Apparently it's wrong because of rook f6. But after, say, knight to d2 here, rook f6 and queen to h5, white has a knight and a bishop in return for a rook, and white is actually much better, as you can tell from the evaluation bar. So Daniel plays this move knight to g5 after a 7-second thing, and this is one of the things that I would like to highlight about why chess is such a brutal game. When you look at this game, there's certain moments that are so critical and crucial, and honestly, without knowing when you need to think, when you need to move fast, it's very tough. And Daniel plays this logical knight g move immediately, missing the rook g5 idea. Now, had rook g5 been played, I would have had to take the rook, and after knight takes, you'll notice there's this classic family fork with knight takes e6, forking the rook, the queen, and the king here. And after I play a move like queen to e8, takes, king here, queen h6, queen g6, white can force a draw by repetition by simply moving the pony back and forth, and this will be over. But Daniel plays knight g5, which is what I expected. I blitz out queen to f6 here, guarding my bishop on h6, guarding the pawn on e6 against the family fork. And at this point, white is simply completely lost, because here I'm able to bring the rook into the game, trade off more pieces, and because I have the material advantage, if there's no checkmate on the spot, I'm going to win the game. So we get queen f4. I trade, king h8, c3 played here. Important move, of course, because if white plays a move like rook h5, I'll go queen to d4, checking the king here and forcing the exchange of the queens. And now with a minute 50 on the clock and a rook for a bishop, I'll win this 100 times out of 100. So we get the move c3. I play rook e8, rook h5, e5, queen f3, and now I play the move e4. Now these moves, I felt a little bit uncomfortable about them during the game, so I thought I was making it a little bit messy, but the computer in fact loves this, because when you get a rook behind a passed pawn, as the classic saying goes, you push p up the board and promote the pawn with the rook supporting it. So I go e4, queen f4. Now I play the move e3, continuing to push the p. Probably pawn takes pawn objectively would have been better, because after bishop takes pawn and rook to e7 here, I'm still guarding the pawn on h7 like in the game, but this white king can't run over to try and blockade the pawn as though the king is a goalie. But I play e3, and now Daniel takes. I go rook e7, king f1. And as you'll notice here, Daniel's trying to blockade this pawn. So if we get e2, king e1, the king stops the pawn from queening. And now there's a faint glimmer of hope with the rook and the bishop and the 90-degree triangle to try and win the game. So I go d5. We get king e2. I play d4 here, creating the protected passed pawn. And now Daniel plays the move c4. And this is the final nail in the coffin. I'm not really sure how white can really keep the game going, honestly, but after c4, I correctly spot the move queen to b6, hitting the juicer. We get b3, and after queen to a5, here comes the queen to infiltrate and checkmate the white king here. And with the queen infiltrating, the game just ends. So you get queen h6, I check, king f3, I check, king g4, and now I play the move rook to g7. My rook guards the pawn, checks the king. We get bishop g6, and now I play the move rook to f6 here, and with the double rooks attacking the bishop, this rook stopping the lone checkmate here, the game ends in a few moves. We get king to h3, I take, queen f4, trade, I play rook to e7 here, putting the rook back behind the p to push it. We get rook to e5, I take, and here Daniel Naroditzky resigns the game, because after takes and e2, I will simply promote the pawn to a queen like right here, and simply go check and checkmate and win in this situation. So I get a very, very big win in round number 9 with the black pieces. In round number 10, I would win once again against Sergey Dragalov, a Russian grandmaster. That would put me on a score with 9 out of 10. I was a half point ahead of Alireza Firouzja, Fabiano Caruana, and I believe Sergey Dragalov as well. So I have a half point lead ahead of these 3 illustrious players. And I'm expecting a relatively easier pairing, right? I'm leading by half point. I have the best tiebreaker, but no. As the chess gods would have it, I naturally have to play a player who's on 8 points out of 10, a certain 5-time world champion by the name of Magnus Carlsen. Now, Magnus had 8 out of 10 struggling, but because I played all the players with a half point below me, it led to this very unfortunate pairing. But the situation is actually not all that bad, because since I'm leading the tournament by a half point with 9 out of 10 headed into the final round, if I can make a draw against Magnus with the black pieces, I will win the tournament on tiebreak. So I have draw odds. Let's see if for once I can avoid choking at the end of an event. Magnus opens with c4. I play the move e5. This, of course, is the classic English opening. We get g3, knight f6, bishop g2, and I play the move c6. Magnus goes d4. I trade. I play d5, and now we get the move knight to f3. Now, it's worth noting that in a previous Title Tuesday edition, I think about 2 or 3 months ago, I actually played the move d takes c4, and I went on to beat Magnus in this position, but I knew that Magnus would be well prepared. I also was actually a little bit worse for a couple moves in that game, so I didn't want to repeat the same line. So I play this move knight to a6. Now what's funny here is that early in the event with the white pieces, I actually had this position with knight c3, knight a6, takes, bishop c5, or actually it was the other order, sorry. I think I played, it was something like this, takes, bishop c5, takes, knight c3, and castles against Sergey Zhigalko. So it was kind of familiar. And because of that earlier game, I thought, you know what, let's try to imitate Zhigalko and put this knight on the rim with a bunch of jumpy squares. So we get castles. I play bishop c5, queen to e5, and now I go queen to e7. Magnus takes on d5, I trade, and I play the move knight takes d5. Now at this point, once again, as with many of my games against Magnesium Calcium, I'm down 30 seconds on the clock here, but we are in an endgame. Now I have noticed Magnus's bread and butter for the last probably 20 years has primarily been endgames, especially in Rapid and Blitz. He is unparalleled in them. He's such a great player that you're always a little bit nervous, and it's very clear that Magnus himself thinks this is where he has the biggest edge. So we get knight d3. I play bishop to b6 here, and now Magnus plays move bishop takes knight on d5. Now it's worth pointing out, I could go back to e7 here, but after takes and the move knight to c3, let's say bishop e6 and rook d1, very quickly white is going to gang up on this isolated d pawn in the center of the board with these knights, and it's going to be tough to play. So I go bishop b6. Magnus trades on d5, plays move knight c3, and now I play the move bishop e6. Now here I could have played the move pawn to d4, but after knight to d5, without knowing that this position is completely fine for me, it's hard to play because the bishop is a little bit janky here. If I move the bishop after, say, rook d1, it feels like this pawn is going to become a very easy target in a couple of moves. And of course, I don't have increment. I've got 4 minutes, so I'm probably gonna have to spend a ton of time trying to work out all these ideas. And if I make even one wrong move, I'm probably gonna be suffering heavily on the clock. So I go bishop to bishop b6. We get the trade. I play bishop e6. We get knight a4, and now I play the move bishop d8. Now I could have played bishop d4 as well, but I actually was worried about this move bishop to e3 here. And after takes, I still have this isolated pawn. These knights are very active, and I just didn't feel very comfortable. So I go bishop to d8 instead, intending to route the bishop to f6 to hit the diagonal. We get bishop f4, bishop e7, rook c1, castles, and now Magnus plays move bishop e5. Now the great thing here for me, even though I'm down like 15 seconds on the clock, is that I have very concrete plans of putting the rooks on the open file. I have the two b's here, so I never should really be in danger of losing. But having lost far too many games to Magnus from equal positions, I know not to relax. We get bishop to e5. I play rook f8 here. Now, this is a moment where I spent 40 seconds on this move. I wasn't really sure what to do here. I thought about f6. I thought about bishop g4. I also thought about rook ac8, but ultimately I put the f rook here just because it felt like moving this rook meant my king could come closer to the center of the board. So you get knight to f4. Now here I play this move knight to b4 in this position, and this is where I feel really, really proud of my play. Because when I went knight b4, this is a move that I played in 4 seconds. I did not panic. I did not see the boogeyman and worry about some kind of big attack on the bishop or the pawn here. So I was very happy with this move, and I played knight b4 quickly. And now you'll notice I'm down 1 hour, not 1 hour, I'm down 1 minute on the clock here. I'm down a minute. If I can start moving quickly next 4 or 5 moves, maybe Magnus will have to start thinking, and the time advantage will dissipate, and I'll be able to draw or win the game. So I go knight b4. Magnus plays knight c3, and now I play the move bishop g5. This move is not the best move here. Computer wants rook to d8, but again, remember, with no increment in this situation, I have to be very, very careful when to use the time, when to move quickly. All these things are difficult to work out. So I go bishop g5. Magnus plays bishop d6. I play knight c6. We get rook d1. And at this moment, I was very happy because when I trade and play the move d4, now the isolated pawn is starting to move. The pawn won't really become a weakness. We also have opposite color bishops here. So because of that, I felt very comfortable at this moment. As long as the pawn is stuck on d5 and can't advance with support, I felt that I would always have some technical issues, even if the position objectively is equal. But now I'm able to get the pawn going. You'll notice that Magnus has burned through his 1 minute time advantage. Time is back to even. And already here I was starting to wonder if I might not have chances to win the game. So I go rook to d8. Magnus goes rook d2, rook d7, b3 here, not rook a d1, which actually is not bad. I think the reason Magnus didn't play this move is probably because he thought I would take. And after knight takes d4, I think I can just go rook to d8 here. And after takes with opposite color bishops, the game will be a draw. So Magnus plays b3 here, stopping bishop takes a2. And now I play the move rook a d8. Magnus goes rook a d1, and now I play the move a6, kicking the pony away from the square where it targets the pawn. And now I go f6 with a very nasty idea here of playing a move like g5, trapping this bishop and winning the game on the spot. Magnus goes h4. I play h6, threatening g5 once again to trap the bishop. And now Magnus plays this move h5. Now this move does effectively lose the game in some ways, but it's already very, very hard to play because after rook to b2, which is probably the best move, I go g5, takes, bishop c1, and now I can play something like knight to e5 with d3 incoming. There are a lot of weak squares around the white king. There's no fianchetto bishop to protect the king on this g2 square, so with no fianchetto bishop, as you can tell from the valuation bar, white is in a world of hurt. So Magnus plays h5, I go bishop g4, and now I'm simply going to gobble this pawn on h5 for free. It is gratis, and with an extra pawn here, there's zero chance of losing the game. So we get knight c2, I play bishop takes h5 here. Bishop takes e2 and d3 are also both completely fine, but there's no need to gamble here because when I take this pawn, I'm up a pawn on the edge of the board. I'm still threatening g5 to trap the bishop. And again, knowing that I also have draws makes it a lot easier because I have complete freedom to play however I wish from this point on. So you get f3. I play d3. We get the trade. I take f3. And now I'm simply up a pawn in an endgame. It's important to note here that I have the 3-on-1 on the king side versus the central pawn. So even if white can trade the knights, I have chances to win. So we get king f2. I drop back, bring the king. We get knight d4. And now I trade the knights off on d4. Now, I don't know for sure if this is correct from the general standpoint of whether the game is winning or not, but the great thing for me is that I have draw odds. So when I take the knight here, I know that it's either completely winning or it's completely a draw, but there is 0.00% chance of me losing, especially because I'm also up 10 seconds on the clock. So here my goal is to start pushing my p, create some passed pawns, and win the game. We get king e3. I bring the king forward, I actually around here start to realize that at this moment in the game here, with the 2 wide peepos going up the board, I can also start to abuse Magnus on the clock here and really push him around. So Magnus goes a3. I play h5. Now I go king g4. We get bishop b6. And now I go back just to waste a couple more seconds. Bishop b5, king e2. And now I bring the king. And at some point, my intention is simply to use these wide peepos to win the game. So we get king f2. I take the pawn, a4. I play h4, a5. Now I go bishop e4. Now you're probably thinking, why did Magnus give up the pawn? The reason is because Magnus's only prayer here is to lock up the queen side with these 2 pawns and find a way to stop the 2 juicers. Now I will point out an interesting note about the split pawn endgame very quickly before we get too deep in here, is it's worth noting that if we get to a position, I think this is always going to be winning, if I'm not mistaken. But if white can get a position just to set it up, something like this, I do believe that this might still be a draw. I guess even this is losing, but there are situations where the pawn's being split only by this 1 row, this can be a draw. So there are possibilities, but in this case, it's not that moment. So back to the game. I go here, I bring the bishop back, I bring the king back. Now I play h3, I go king f3, and the goal is very simple. Move the king to e2, use the split pawns. The king and the bishop cannot stop both pawns, and I will win the game. So we get king h2, I drop the bishop to guard the pawn. We get here, I go king e3, king g1, I play f3, and now Magnus resigns the game because after bishop g3, king to e2, if white moves the bishop, I push the p and queen the pawn. If Magnus tries to stop it, I go h2, sacking this one, and now white has to give up the bishop or I get a queen once again. If white plays bishop c5, same thing. King e2, bishop b6, h2, sacking one, and now the other one will get through, or white gives us the bishop, and then I'll gobble the pawns and win the game very quickly. So I get a very, very big win in the 11th and final round of the tournament. I run the table in the final 3 games, beating Danya, beating Magnus. I score 10 points out of 11, get my first Title Tuesday win in the new edition. And with that, I'm very, very thrilled, as I feel like I finally sort of figured out what I need to do with the new time control. Additionally, this helps me get a little bit closer to the Esports World Cup qualification with this victory. So it is a big, big win and a great day all around. So I hope you guys enjoyed this recap from the Title Tuesday. Today is September 23rd of the great year 2025. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with more great recaps, content, everything in the very near future. Hope you guys enjoyed it and have a great rest of your day. See you soon. Bye.